About 25 foot of water right here, but see these suspended fish?
Right.
These fish are sitting up here 5 or 6 foot, and what we're doing is we're actually grafting these fish, getting a buoy on them, and we're fishing a point here. As we're coming up on this point, these fish are setting off out here on the edge of this point. But what we're doing is grafting these fish like this and getting a buoy on them, and you always want to put that buoy out for a couple reasons. One thing is if you get a really big fish on and you get pulled away from where you're catching these fish, you can always come back to that buoy and get set up in the same position to throw back into that school. If you don't have a buoy out, then you may lose the school and you're just randomly casting, and you may have to regraft again. But what we're looking for is like these suspended fish, and there's quite a few here. We've actually caught a few here. Get back up here, and most of the time when you're using this graft, lots of times during the day you're going to find the fish that you start out catching maybe in 25 foot, they may stay in 25 foot all day, so you may go from one point to one hump to a road bed and always start looking for them in the same depth that you've been finding them in. But these fish were in about 25, 24 foot. These fish right here is 25 foot and there's 20, so these fish are 6 or 7 foot off the surface. We're actually bringing that spoon up and we're keeping it up here. So we're going through that strike zone right here. There's a good bunch of fish right there. We could probably catch a couple of them fish. If you'll learn to read your graft and believe what your graft is telling you, there'll be so many times that you'll see that and you've got so much confidence that you can turn around and actually bring a bait up and catch these fish right here. Lots of times guys will drive right over the top of them. They have no clue how to catch them. I see fish, but I don't know how to catch them. But we're telling you, you take that big spoon and you pull that spoon up through here, you're going to get bit. These fish will bite.
Now, Rick, show them the difference between the bass and shad.
Well, what you'll have is these are pods of shad that we're seeing up on the surface. But when you got arcs like this right here, these arcs, when you have an arc that's like this, anything shaded in, it actually kind of tell you the size of the fish. If you just got an arc up here and no girth to it, it's probably a little schooling bass. We have barfish in here, which are called yellow bass. So they're more like just took a pencil and draw an arc. But when you see bass, nice fish, normally you'll have the arc and then you'll have it shaded in. It'll all be colored in, and the more shade you got, the bigger the fish. One thing about the graphs, you always want to run these graphs on manual. Get off automatic. The computer's telling it what to do when it's on automatic, so it's really doubling everything. What you want to do is set your graph up to where when you turn it on, all I do the whole day is I've got my depth chart right here. If I want to change, if I go up shallower and I want to go up to here, I just change my depth. That's all I do the whole day. My graph's set, don't have to mess with it. Biggest deal is whatever I see on this graph, I believe I can catch them when I see them. There's a pot of shad. That shad right there. Normally a perfect situation, you'd have a ball of shad like that, and maybe the fish are on the bottom like these right here. But this time of year, lots of times your shad's going to be up high, and the fish are going to be on them up here high. That other little bunch of fish we seen a while ago didn't have any shad around them. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me whether there's bait here or not. Most of the time, you get a bait in a group of fish, one or two of them is going to bite. Sometimes if you got shad, they may be a lot more active and feeding. But it doesn't matter to me whether I got bait or not. As long as I've got a group of fish and I can get a bait in there on that group of fish, you're probably going to catch some of them.
Yeah, there's a bunch of shad in there right now.
All these pods of shad are up high, and we're actually seeing these shad come up to the surface. That's where we're seeing some of these schooling fish. These fish are suspended, and what they'll do, they'll get on a ball of that shad and push them up to the surface, and we'll have one blow up. We caught a couple that's just come up to the surface. But get you a good graph. Learn how to read it. You don't have to have no $1,800 graph to catch fish. I mean, these graphs, $300 or $400. The biggest deal is to learn to read your graph and believe what your graph. It's almost like a compass. Whatever I see on that graph, I believe I'm seeing, and the more you do it, the better you get.